competitors on board with that, so we're going to keep you on board with it too. So who would like to begin? Go right ahead.
Thank you for your support of public transportation and giving NIPTA the opportunity to testify today. I am James Morrell, President of NIPTA and Director of Public Transit for NFTA in Buffalo, New York. Earlier today you heard from MTA and we support their priorities. I will address the needs of transit systems in upstate New York and in the downstate suburbs. The mobility provided by public transit is essential to economic activity across New York State. Our communities are asking for more services, expanded frequencies, and new mobility choices like on-demand service. Over the prior 2 years, state aid to non-MTA transit has grown by 15%. This is an endorsement of the critical role that transit plays in supporting the economy, environment, social equity, and affordable housing. At the same time, the cost to operate transit service is rising as inflation pressures operating and capital budgets. We thank Governor Hochul for recognizing the importance of public transportation in her executive budget. Operating aid to upstate transit will grow by 5.4% and 5.6% for downstate. Adding to the governor's proposal to maintain the 15% annual growth in state aid will provide funding predictability essential to delivering the quality services our communities need. With more resources, transit can increase bus frequencies, extend span of service and coverage, introduce bus rapid transit, and add on-demand services where needed. In Buffalo, we would increase service levels on many of our heavily used buses and continue our efforts to serve employment opportunities. Upstate transit faces a further hurdle in being reliant on state general funds, comprising nearly 50% of upstate transit aid in the executive budget. All systems need and deserve dedicated, sustainable revenues to provide essential services and support the state initiatives. Fixing upstate funding requires dedicated revenues to replace or supplement the current underperforming sources and adequately fund transit in the future. In 2022, the governor and the legislature approved a 5-year capital plan for non-MTA transit funded at $159 million per year. The executive budget reduces this amount to $139 million by eliminating the past appropriation to NFTA for modernizing our rail infrastructure. NFTA recommends continuing the $159 million appropriation and addressing additional member agency capital needs such as the NFTA and reappropriating their 5-year capital program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee. Got to press it hard. Really hard. There you go.
I've been watching for hours. I should know this by now. Hi, good evening. I'm Lisa Dagley, and I'm the Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. Created by the legislature in 1981. Thank you. PCAC represents riders on the MTA's Long Island Railroad, Metro North Railroad, and New York City Subway's buses in the Staten Island Railway. Our role is to advocate on behalf of riders and advise the MTA on operational performance and capital projects through policy recommendations and reports. Thank you very much for holding this hearing today. On behalf of the millions of people who use the system, thank you for everything you do and did last year to fully fund the MTA's operating budget like the essential service that it is, going even further and increasing service. And we thank our colleagues in advocacy here, particularly Riders Alliance, for all the work that they did to move the needle on that. We're pleased that the governor continues to likewise show her understanding of the vital importance of transit to riders as an economic driver to the region. And there's still a lot of work to be done to make transit more reliable, safe, equitable, and affordable for riders. We have several proposals that we've shared with your office and that we're happy to discuss with you in more detail. We look forward to working with you this budget season to advance more fair discounts and options so that transit isn't cost prohibitive for any rider and opens up opportunities for education, jobs, leisure, travel, entertainment, and all the region has to offer. Affordability is key for all New Yorkers, and that's why it's crucial to expand fare discounts and options around the MTA system. We support the proposal to forgive a rider's fare evasion summons if they enroll in fair fares, but that doesn't translate at the moment to the Long Island Railroad and Metro North because fair fares doesn't exist on the commuter railroads, and we think it's time to change that. Low-income New Yorkers should be able to afford to ride the rail infrastructure that runs through their backyards, and also to be afforded the same opportunities as people who ride the subways. We'd like to see a city ticket weekly offered with available transfers to subways and buses to fill the void from the elimination of Atlantic Ticket Weekly. We've asked the MTA to initiate a field study this year to assess its feasibility. We're also calling for extending the senior and disabled Medicare 50% fare discounts to the morning peak on the Long Island Railroad and Metro North. Currently, the only time when this discount doesn't apply. It's time to send a clear message that New York values these groups' contributions to the workforce and their communities. We also strongly represent the Rider Representation Act, which would provide voting seats on the MTA board for its rider representatives. Currently, the only members on the board required to ride transit. Would also add a new member with disabilities recommended by the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities with input from the respected disability organizations. Congestion pricing, we spoke a lot about that, and we'd love to talk more about it, but my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I got to push hard too. Riders Alliance.
Good afternoon. My name is Danny Perlstein. I'm the Policy and Communications Director of the Riders Alliance. We are a grassroots organization in New York City of subway and bus riders fighting for better public transit. And thanks to you all, in significant part, we have a pretty good record. New York, as Lisa was describing, is uniquely positioned post-pandemic to have a thriving public transit system, and that is due to the good work you put in place both before the pandemic, not being able to see what would happen with congestion pricing, but also last year, with new sustained funding to replace some of that fare revenue lost due to work from home primarily. So we are immensely grateful. We are spending a lot of our time and energy right now organizing to improve what is unfortunately still the slowest bus service in the nation. Obviously we have heavily congested streets, congestion pricing will help with that, but we need more and better priority for what is also the largest bus riding population in the nation, the people in the 5 boroughs. So we are working actively on that. On congestion pricing, as you all discussed with the chair earlier, there's been widespread misinformation about the work that's gone into preparation for the program, and I just want to highlight that the MTA spent more than 2 years preparing more than 4,000 pages of environmental studies of the program under the close supervision of the United States government. So the reason that opponents of the program are able to point to particular potential environmental impacts is in fact because they have already been studied exhaustively. Had we not known what they were, they couldn't be pointing them out today. But I want to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about some work that we're now doing on the state level, organizing with folks all across the state, Buffalo, in Rochester, and Syracuse, here in Albany, as well as the Hudson Valley and Westchester and Long Island, in an emerging coalition that we'll be introducing up here in a couple of weeks called New Yorkers for Transportation Equity. And our proximate goal is to change the conversation around how the state DOT operates. New York obviously spends more money than any other state on public transit, but we could be doing better, and we could be providing more options for more New Yorkers in rural, suburban, and urban communities to get around, right? And the DOT commissioner spoke effectively to that when she was answering Assemblymember Gallagher's question that she wants to create more opportunities to walk, bike, and ride public transit, but as she also said in response to the same question, the state is spending lots of money on highway widenings still to this day, and that includes in New York City, where the state of New York is investing $5 billion to widen the Van Wyck, the Bruckner, the Belt, and the FDR Drive. And so there is a lot that we could do if we were able to reinvest those funds. There's a lot more freedom and opportunity and mobility that we can create all across New York and all of our communities, and as Steve will discuss, in between our communities with better rail connections. And so we're eager to discuss that with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you, that was quick. Empire State Passengers Association.
Good afternoon. Finance Committee Chair Kruger, Transportation Chairs Magnarelli and Kennedy, and members of the legislative committees here today. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on the proposed budget for the Department of Transportation. My name is Steve Strauss, and I'm the Executive Director of the Empire State Passengers Association. ESPA is a statewide advocacy organization working on behalf of intercity passenger rail riders for more reliable, more frequent, and faster Amtrak service in New York. Let me start my testimony with a rhetorical question. How many of you knew that the state had released an $8.8 billion plan to improve intercity passenger rail service? A plan that proposed spending $350 million a year to rebuild the tracks between Niagara Falls and New York, between New York City, construct 370 miles of new track, reduce the travel time between Buffalo and Albany by an hour, and add 4 additional trains over the next 25 years. I'm guessing that few of you knew this unless you had heard it from an ESPA member constituent, or maybe your staff had heard it from me. That's part of the problem. If you reviewed the FY25 Executive Budget Briefing Book, you will not find much mention of an expanded intercity passenger rail program. What you will find is about $90 million of proposed spending on passenger rail, nearly identical to prior years. Amtrak will receive about $44 million to pay for the cost of providing Amtrak service in New York State. The remaining $45 million supports the Passenger and Freight Rail Assistance Program, which funds capital improvements to freight and passenger rail service. The administration's budget proposes a 10-person increase in full-time equivalents for the department, but no increase in staff for the Office of Passenger and Freight Transportation. Without more resources, new state hires, consultants, and capital funds, DOT will not be able to get this rail improvement program off the ground. Even worse, this lack of resources, and more importantly, lack of commitment from senior level staff, puts us at risk of continuing to fall short at winning our share of discretionary funding from the infrastructure bill. Now let me pivot to a novel idea for additional funding for the state's intercity passenger rail program. You may remember that Governors Cuomo and Murphy announced a handshake deal with the Biden administration to pay for 50% of the Gateway tunnels and related infrastructure improvements. To date, the federal funding of the Gateway project is now over 68% of the projected cost. This means that New York has a potential savings of about $1 billion that it could reallocate to other intercity passenger rail improvements and perhaps commuter rail. Let's take that money and invest it in projects to advance the Empire Corridor Rail Plan. Thank you for allowing us to testify today. I would be happy to try and answer any questions that members of the committee might have.
Perfect timing.
We have
We do.
go right ahead.
Oh, thank you. Senator Kennedy, our transportation chair. Only 3 minutes, everyone.
Thank you very much. First of all, thanks for all of your testimony, your leadership over many years. James, great to see you. You had mentioned the NFT. I want to give you another opportunity to talk about the importance there, about the 5-year capital plan. The ask is $150 million. Can you talk about what that $150 million will be used for with that 5-year capital plan? Also, STOA, obviously it's important to all of the public transit authorities. If you could talk to it from your perspective. And we'll start there.
Sure.
Capital and STOA.
Sure. Thank you, Senator. As you indicated, NFTA was appropriated $100 million over 5 years. That was gone before we even got it. We're doing great things with that. We need another 5 years. You indicated $150 million. Tunnel and fire protection needs to be replaced. The panel liners is crumbling within the station. We have to upgrade all the elevators and escalators. There's not a difference with an elevator and an escalator in downstate New York City and in Buffalo.
Highway superintendent.
We have a number of issues that we're working on continuously in a state of good repair that is needed to provide the level of service that our community needs. So the additional funding, along with the $159 million for all of non-MTA capital, would continue to provide for the level of service that we need. And also, with the $150 million, it would allow us to be able to have, to leverage the federal funds from FTA for new projects.
And let me just accent that real quick, we've got a minute left. I want you to hit on the drain financially that light rail is to the operations of the city.
Sure.
And the need
So-
for more funding.
Sure. So for many years, we've taken away our operating resources to put into capital, and that has not allowed us to extend service, hire individuals. So providing $150 million would do great things to modernize the system, to be ready for expansion, but also hold harmless the operating budget from STOLA at the 15% that's been generated over the past few years.
So 15% operating, that's the ask. The executive budget put in about 5.
Yes.
Can you talk about the need to bump that up by another 10%?
Sure. So what it will do is it will provide the opportunity for NFTA and other upstate properties, as well as the suburban areas outside of New York City, to expand service, to provide additional services where we're not going currently.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We'll have an on-demand shuttle from the Rensselaer train station to downtown Albany, and that they were hoping to get it into operation by next month, and I'm not sure what the start date is.
So, do we have pilots on the ground already? Excuse that bad pun. Do we have pilots operational at this point?
Let's say that the CDTA program is on track, and 3 other upstate systems have $1 million each, and then I think there's $1 million of discretionary money that state DOT will make available to other transit systems in the state. I believe that's the way it's set up.
In the MTA system, that, first mile, last mile is something that's really critical, particularly because it's very linear, it's very expensive, it's very old. And in some places it's worked, some places it hasn't worked as well to put in on-demand service. The MTA, to their credit, developed a first mile, last mile toolkit that it worked with local communities to shop around, to see what will work, how the local communities can make the best of what resources they have, and it will help those communities and municipalities apply for grants that they're eligible for. So there is a lot of work on the MTA level. Now, we, as the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA, have been very involved in developing a bike ped report and recommendations that we put forward to the MTA that they incorporated into their report, into their recommendations. That's not just for New York City, that's also for the counties outside and for the systems outside. Because you have to get there and home.
Thank you. Do you think this all has a future? Jump ball for everybody.
It has to.
Good question, that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Senator Convery.
Thank you. Please today, and thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here today, and me as well. Can you drill down into why you think the benefit program would make sense for the community?
I'd be delighted to. Thank you. So the Fair Fares program works on city subways and buses, and it doesn't work, we think, as well as it could, because it's good for people who are eligible, who have make 120% with federal poverty level. We've been advocating with our colleagues in advocacy for 200% at the federal poverty level. That would allow more people to access it. But it's still for just subways and buses. It means that people who have a commuter rail, the Long Island Railroad Metro North, running through their backyard, but can't afford the fare, may have to ride 2 hours on subways and buses in order to get to work or to school. So by cutting the fare in half for them and enabling them access to opportunity with a reduced fare, we think the city is able to fund that with the Fair Fares funding that they currently have, since it's not currently utilized, which is also a shame.
And can you elucidate the Fair Fares program that you're talking about to make sure that commuters can understand or see that there's a clear and concise program across the different modalities to take the take either the train or the subway that we discussed?
So right now, if you are, it's an income eligible based system for subways and buses. If you are making 120% of the federal poverty level as an individual or family of four, you can apply for fair fares and get a card that allows you to ride on subways and buses at a half fare. But you can't use that on subways and buses. It's because there's no parity on the Long Island Railroad. So you can't use that on Long Island Railroad and Metro North. There's no parity between the systems, which is a whole nother conversation on fare integration and rationalization that we hope will come together. But right now, we think the time has come for expanding fare fares to the Long Island Railroad and Metro North within the city, so that it makes sense for the city to fund it.
Can you also talk about the creating the program so that each region would have its own clear fare system so that people can understand? And why do you think that would increase ridership?
I'm sorry, so that
Each region in the MTA area to create a clear zone fare system?
Oh, absolutely. Right now, it's a very legacy system on each of the different railroads that is sort of, if they eliminate one zone, they just didn't renumber it. So you can't tell, it's not a distance-based formula. So we think that making it rational makes sense so that people can understand where they're going and how much they're paying.
Thank you. Thank you.
Assembly.
I don't see anybody else, so I think we're finished. You? Yeah? Member Simon? No? Okay. We're all set. You're all everything.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you all
Thank you
very
very much.
much for your testimony. Thank you.